That's my...
And it doesn't help that the judge is conducting himself like an enabler. If you truly wanted to help this brother, you tell him, well, you know what, brother, it's great that you're growing as a person. It's great that you've acknowledged your faults. That's the reason why you're able to progress. But as long as you plan on keeping those tats on your face, you're going to have these same issues throughout your life. So you can either learn to deal with these problems, these potential issues, or you can have those tats removed. It's up to you.
That's my opinion.
All right.
She approached the car in an aggressive manner.
Got it.
You know,
But you didn't do anything physical, and you didn't curse her out.
No, sir.
Did you?
know,
All right. Well, there it is. I think sounds like you were pretty much respectful in what you thought was disrespect towards you.
More of Judge Mathis in a moment.
You have teardrops. A lot of your friends killed or something. See, teardrops. Don't you have a few there?
Yes, that's
About
for
how
the...
many you have there?
I have about, I believe like 12.
12 of your friends killed?
Yes, sir.
Because that's what each teardrop represents. What's it?
Yeah, and each person killed represents a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice. That's why oftentimes you'll notice, especially here in New York, the gangs oftentimes perform their initiations around the times of Easter. That's why I mentioned to you, brothers, that you always have to pay attention to events that occur, especially involving blood or murders, deaths, fires, especially because Tammuz is the god of fire. He represents fire. That's literally what the name Tammuz means. It means purified by fire. Always pay attention to this time period, right after the spring equinox, all the way through May 1st or May Day. You'll oftentimes see many events occur revolving around initiations into gangs, slashings, murders, and not just the regular kind, the quote-unquote regular kind. I mean the ceremonial or the ritual kind. So always pay very close attention to that, particularly around Easter, or right after April 19th, where we start to go into what they call Earth Day. That's why they use that term, go green. Please understand that Heru is also known as the Green Man, as is Tammuz, the Green Man, the god of vegetation. Asar, before he was put to death, was also known as the Green Man. Osiris is depicted as having black skin as the god of death, or green skin as the god of vegetation, of fertility. And sacrifices are made to him. Once again, the gangs that we see that are so popular in many of the quote-unquote urban communities in the United States are just low-level Luciferians. They're low-level Masons. Why do I call them low-level? Because for the most part, they don't understand the origins of their practices. The hand signs, the finger signs, stacking, etc., the stances, many of the tattoos that they get, the meanings behind them, like the trident or the cross. They don't really grasp why they're doing what they're doing. But it's just low-level Luciferianism, masonry, low-level masonry. And as I mentioned before, there's a big difference between having a demon and having issues. Right? Demons are exacerbated issues. They're things that are deleterious to your life. Oftentimes, they become hurtful to those around you. Sometimes they're known in the psychological field as psychoses, or even you embracing certain ideologies. Like, for example, feminism or globalism. Those are demons, believe it or not, when you adhere to those things. Those are demons because those are ideologies that you have allowed to ingest into your brain, and you think that those things are beneficial when they're truly not. But that's a whole other video for another day, what demons are as opposed to what issues are. Because the judge made a statement earlier in this court case alleging that everybody has demons. No, everybody has problems or issues that they have to deal with. But as long as you're a productive individual, I wouldn't call everyone the carrier of a quote-unquote demon. But we are all in the flesh, so we're all prone to weakness.
What city are you from?
I'm from Long Beach, California.
Yeah, Long Beach, Compton is totally gang-ridden. And what group, if you don't mind, or gang?
I'm affiliated with the Crips.
Crips?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I know a lot of Crips in L.A., Long Beach.
Yeah.
I do. I know a couple of the founders of the Crips.
Yeah.
We've done things together in the community to try and discourage gang violence.
Yeah.
Tookie Williams, he was one of the founders of the Crips. He was nominated for a
Allegedly, he's one of the founders of the Crips. Allegedly. The Crips, if I remember correctly, were created by a person named Raymond Lee Washington. And allegedly, supposedly, the reason that they got their start was due to J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO program, which was instigated to try to throw off some of the influence of the quote-unquote Black Panther Party in the black community. So, but that's a whole other video for another day. But yes, Tookie Williams was also in the mix there. But you brothers are going to find that a lot of the instigators, the prime movers of many of these gangs in the 50s and 60s, they had ties to some of the alphabet agencies in America. And when they were no longer of use, they just got their strings cut. That's all.
A Nobel Peace Prize for the children's books that he wrote, discouraging gang involvement, and he was very effective in it. And went and met him, went to his funeral.
Yeah, I heard about you being on the block doing good things.
You heard me doing that? Yeah, I go over there and try to do a little work. And so I'm glad you're turning your life around. You being a welder, clearly you've done that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So good for the brother on that.
And you're out of those streets. And I applaud you. It was about the same age. I applaud you. You know, I was a street guy. And how old are you?
I'm 26.
Yeah, I was a street guy. I may have come out of the street a little earlier than you, but, you know, I pursued and achieved a career, so I'm glad to hear that's where you're at. And a lot of the gangbangers, I want you all to see and how you can recover from that life and become successful.
Absolutely. You see that, brothers? There's always a solution to a problem, no matter how bad the issue is. Now, the solution may not be easy to actionize or to have come to fruition for you, but there's always a solution there. And as opposed to protesting and begging people who are only going to have power over you continuously to benefit you by donating money that you really don't know what to do with, it's best that each and every man decide that he's going to be productive to himself so that he can be his own king. And that's what life is about, so that you don't have to worry about anybody telling you how much you owe them for your state in life. And that's truly what they want for the so-called black man. That's why I constantly try to make sure that you brothers are informed in regards to the fount or the origins of groups like the so-called Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Lesbians Matter movement, and what their true intentions are, which is to empower the black homosexual and black lesbian over you. They only want to use you as someone on the front line at the vanguard of these movements so that you can do all the hard work and they can reap all the benefits. That's it. That's why they want people like Vivek Ranadive to donate this amount of money, that amount of money. They don't want to empower the so-called black man. See, it's easier to do that and to stage a ruckus than it is to say, how come our brothers, our young so-called black men, do not have the self-image that they should have? The reason why they don't is because they're not informed. And when we start asking those type of questions, then the finger pointing is not just on the so-called Caucasian and their power structure. It starts to go to other demographics that they don't want the finger to be pointed at. And it starts to address certain components of the issue that will make people very uncomfortable. It's easy to talk about the however many black men that are shot down by the cops every year, but how about the thousands of little black fetuses that are aborted every year? Do their lives matter or not? Could they be contributors to the quote-unquote black army that so many of these discordant groups like to act like they're trying to build? Supposedly you're trying to build a black army, so how come you're not telling the liberal black woman to stop aborting kids? I wonder why that is. Most likely because that would not jibe with your liberal ideologies.
One other thing I want to point out and ask you about, and I've always tried, well, I don't say it too much because I can't be too critical of these guys, but it's always puzzled me why the West Coast guys, and some in Chicago, they fight and shoot and kill, and it's unrelated to money.
That's a great question, brother, but the answer is pretty obvious. It's because most of the major gangs that are located on the West Coast or even parts of Middle America like Chicago are directly associated with many of the alphabet intelligence agencies that pretty much took over America after World War II. The Bloods and the Crips, they got their fount after the LA Watts riots. After the Watts riots in 1965, the FBI decided that they were going to set up a program in Los Angeles known as the Community, I'm trying to remember the exact name. I believe it's the Community Resources Inner City Project. And that was around 65 or 66. That basically was set up as a front organization to watch many of the potential uprisings in the black community. And as you can tell, Community Resources Inner City Project is, the acronym would be CRIP. And they basically had their feelers out. And allegedly, they were able to bankroll many of the younger tough guys in the Los Angeles area, just waiting to see who they could get to be someone that they could mark as a leader and start some of these gangs, because they were trying to offset some of the energy that was being promoted by some of the militant aspects within the so-called black community, especially by the later 60s, the quote-unquote the Black Panther Party, which itself was a Marxist and Discordian group that was set up by Huey P. Newton. For those of you who don't know, Huey P. Newton was put under the programming when he got locked up in the late 60s. And he became an associate of Jim Jones, who, as most of you know, was a CIA asset and was the leader of the People's Temple. Now, one of Jim Jones's members in his People's Temple was O.J. Simpson's mother. And she was a nurse at one of the psychiatric hospitals in the Bay Area. As many of you know, the psychiatric hospitals are oftentimes fronts for the MKUltra mind control program testing, whether it be the psychotropic drugs and or electroshock treatment. Once again, O.J. Simpson was an asset, but that's neither here nor there. The Bloods and the Crips, they were meant to play out the duality of red versus blue. And that's it. And to promote confusion in the so-called black community. That's why they're so prevalent, and that's why they're fighting over things like color as opposed to money, as Mathis pointed out so well.
In Detroit, that's why they fight. They getting some money. Can you explain that?
Well, my opinion is I grew up being told that I wasn't going to see 18.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think about your decisions because you've been pumped into your brain that you won't see 18. So anything after 18 is new to you.
Okay, so it's not really about money because it's about...
Yeah, once again, the so-called black man is imbued with the belief that his life doesn't matter and that he's not precious. That's the most important thing. And this is why I constantly get on many of the fake and phony liberal black females that are trying to start this protest offshoot about how black women are not getting their just due or the attention that they feel like should be placed on many of their murders, when the target has always been the so-called young black man, because he's the threat. The woman is not a threat to topple governments or societies at all. They never will be viewed as that. So really all that is a distraction attempt to once again cause even more of a fracture between the so-called black man and black woman. And they know that they can go to many of these dysfunctional liberal black women because they're attention mongers.
It's about, okay, let me protect myself from dying because the common belief is that I'm not going to make it past 18 or 21. So no, I'm not focusing on getting any money. I'm focusing on living. So, you know, folks need to understand you all are trying to survive. Unfortunately, they've dumped all these guns and drugs in the neighborhoods and subjected you to a failed education system. And so it's hard to come out of that. In a failed education system, you can't get a job. Thank God you were able to get something using your hands.
I totally agree. But here's the issue that I have with Judge Mathis's statements. Yes, the education system is a failure because it's not meant to tell the truth to the so-called black man. Your oppressor is never going to tell you the truth. And you can't have it both ways. You can't tell me about the importance of Brown versus the Board of Education to integrate the school system and then tell me that the school system has failed the so-called black man. That's the same school system that you tell me I should want to be a part of. So A lot of the more prominent so-called black people have to get their story straight. Has the educational system failed us, or have we failed ourselves because we wanted to be a part of it?
Because for the most part, the school system has failed all of urban America, and families have been destroyed for 2 generations of crack use. Unfortunately, we're going to see the same thing with the opioid epidemic. We're going to see families destroyed. And that epidemic just began, but unfortunately, that's what you're going to see. 2 generations.
They're not going to allow the so-called opioid epidemic to become as severe as the crack epidemic became, because it's affecting the so-called Caucasian more than anyone else. So we already understand that that is never going to be as severe as what occurred in the so-called black community back in the 80s, all the way into the mid to late 90s.
You're going to see the user, the parent, and then you're going to see the child who was neglected while the parent was on drugs. And so 2 generations will be wiped out like they were with crack. You take away education, you flood guns, you flood drugs, what do you think gonna happen? Everybody gonna go to church?
Well, that's all to promote the prison industrial complex, which is one of the major economic resources that this country has. That's the real issue. The real issue is that the so-called black man is viewed as a financial asset, and in order to maximize his earning potential, they need him to launder the drugs that are brought into America and then become a bond within the prison industrial complex that they can cash in on. That's basically all it's about. That's how the system is set up. That's why they flood the so-called black community with guns and drugs, because they already know that they're not going to hire you in their mainstream job force. So, of course, they know that most likely you're going to turn to the guns and the drugs, which is perfect because that allows them to enter you into their prison workforce.
No, they're not going to church. They're going to the corner. All right, so hopefully some of the current gang members will hear me, and it'll get through to them as to what is happening in their world, and they'll wake up like you did. In the meantime, we got to get to this $1,800.
I gave her a $1,500 loan.
When?
August 11, 2016.
11. All right, and when was she to pay?
She was to make monthly payments to me until the
beginning when?
Beginning September 28, 2016.
Okay, how many has she made?
She's only made like periodically payments, and they all ended up to be like around $400.
All right, man, what do you say to this?
So I did get the loan for $1,500. I was making weird payments throughout. But the only reason why I was making weird payments is because I was giving her whatever I had.
What do you mean by weird? You're giving her counterfeit money? Counterfeit money?
No, like sporadic payment.
Yeah, she's basically saying that she was not making any consistent payments. She wasn't able to do so because she was not sure when she was going to have her money. Most likely because she spent all her money tricking on dudes because she has such low self-esteem, she can't keep a man if her life depended on it.
Like sporadic payments. Like I was
inconsistent.
Inconsistent payments. So but the money never seemed to be an issue until we had the falling out, and I no longer want to be her friend. As a talking about
what do you mean it didn't become an issue until
it wasn't like it
became an issue when you stopped paying her?
Absolutely. How could it never have become an issue when, as you already stated, you were paying her? So it clearly wasn't an issue for her to get her money back.
Paying her.
I never stopped paying her. Your Honor. I never stopped paying her.
You're still paying her?
I paid the last payment I made was July of this year.
July, August, September.
You're several months late.
No, I'm talking the last payment. So I've been paying her since then, but the last recent payment I
You've
made.
never been late?
Yeah, I've been late.
How many times?
Well, since then,
Period.
like maybe 8.
Good. 8 times you stopped paying her. I don't know if you know it or not. When you're 8 times late, you didn't pay her those 8 times on time. How many did you miss altogether?
I don't know, Your Honor.
All right, so you don't know how many times you stopped.
Stay tuned. The verdict next.
I mean, let's be for real. It's very obvious that the defendant's going to lose this case. He just need to bang his gavel and say judgment for the plaintiff. The best part of this court case was the fact that we got to delve into some of the issues that are affecting many of these brothers who are thinking about how to get their lives together.
All right, so your counterclaim for $1,200 is for what?
I'm suing her for the last bill. She said we lived together. In June, we did not pay the last bills because we had to move so quickly.
What was her share?
Half of it. So the
I don't
bill.
know what that is.
$67
Total?
total.
Okay. So, and what is the other? You say $67 for bills? That's all she owes?
That's all the one I had for the
Okay,
actual.
and so what else does she owe other than the $67? Why are you asking for $1,200 when the bill is only $67?
Because of harassment.
Look at his face. He's like, young lady, why are you asking for $1,200 when the bill is only $67? Are you mad that you can't get any dick?
Of harassment. I have
What has she done?
statuses here of her constantly talking about me when the situation was
Talking
over.
about you to who?
Talk to status, Facebook, social media.
Okay, and how many times?
I have approximately, these are not even all of them.
How many times do you have?
At least like 15.
Okay, and
And
what
I
do
also
they say?
have.
What do they say about
This
you
one is actually
that caused you emotional? It's him? No, you need to sue him later. We're talking about what she did.
This is both
We're
of them
talking
on
about
this-
what she did. Tell
Okay.
me what she did to you to cause you to deserve $1,200 for harassment.
Let me say this, brothers. If you're one of these brothers on Facebook and Instasham and all those other social media outlets, don't talk shit about people where it can be used as any form of electronic proof that you made statements or allegations against them. Be very wary of what you say on the internet.
There's the statement where she's like, her and her family are like, she's like, I need a real friend,
Okay, she needed a real friend.
I
And
have
that
a-
caused you emotional distress. You had to go to counseling. Exactly what happened. You have to have damages. Judgment for the plaintiff, $67 for you. Have a good day.
He said $67 for you. He's like, that should be enough for you and your man to go out and get some hamburgers. Maybe you can get some dick.
The friendship already been over.
Oh, the friendship's it's been over for a minute now.
She will get an invite to the wedding.
That was the boyfriend's way of saying that, that's the only wedding that you ever going to attend is our wedding. And that was also his way of saying, I know that the reason why you guys fell out is over me. So once again, brothers, be very aware of who your woman is associating with, because that energy will impact your relationship. Fortunately for him, he had a woman who was strong enough to choose him over the friend. And that is most likely because his lady picked up in the spirit that her friend was negative, which is often the case in many of these female cliques. Unfortunately for them, too many of them don't understand that until they're too old to get a good man. And also, as we already covered, for those of you brothers who decided to tat up your neck, tat up your face, don't try to act as if you don't know why people are looking at you in a strange way. They are going to associate how you depict yourself with how you may actually be. So that's life. If you don't want to be affected by that, then have the tattoos removed. But anyway, peace.